Hello and welcome to another fun-packed edition of Talk About the Passion, the internet's premier podcast dealing with regular folk and the regular things they regularly like. Regularly. In this episode, House thinks the hospital is in the throes of an epidemic which is affecting newborn babies, although the lady doctor with a nice boob said it probably isn't, he is a jerk. And then him off Neighbours says the thing, and someone else says, yeah. I could be mistaking myself. Anyway, gripping stuff there, I'm sure you'll agree, but before we get to any of that, let's meet today's guest. He's a musician and yet can speak fluently in joined-up sentences. A case of Dr. House or just a freak anomaly? Let's find out as I welcome today's guest, Mr. Garreth Hirons. Hello, Garreth.
Hello there, Ben.
Well, radio voice, we're liking it. We're liking it so far. We're in there. We're
right in there.
We're the Capital
right
Radio Breakfast Show. Come on. Here's a new one by Level 42.
Well, I do have limited, very kind of, I wouldn't even say local radio, but local neighbourhood radio, I suppose, is the best way.
Local neighbourhood watch radio. Yes, I've just reported. I've seen it. Yes, Mr. Jones is going into number 12. I don't think that's his copy of Take a Break. Now here's one by Level 42. Sadly, your subject for today's Talk About Passion is not Level 42.
No, it's a shame. I should have looked into it a bit more.
So, before we actually say what it is, here's a small audio clue to give the listeners at home an idea about what you've chosen. Right, there's an audio clue there. Put the people out of their misery. What have you chosen for today's passion?
Today's passion is the films of Godzilla.
Now, obviously, you don't mean the director Godzilla.
No, not George Godzilla.
I assume he's not done some sort of indie stuff on the side, like Garden State. It does the money work, and then he does his private projects on the side.
Yeah, it's his more mainstream kind of in front of the camera appearances that I'll be looking at. So,
of course, when you say Godzilla, you mean the awesome 1998 Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin classic flick.
Absolutely, yes. I think that, to be honest, I don't really want to start on a bitter note. I think most fans of the Japanese Godzilla films will hold that film in exactly the same contempt as I do. Well, certainly judging by internet reaction, which of course is always a fine indicator of everything in life.
Oh, indeed, of course. And where would we be without it? That's right, we'd be much happier. So, of course, you mean the original Japanese Godzilla films. So,
yes.
How did you get into that?
Well, I had actually kind of had to think back about this, knowing that this question would probably be one that was asked. And I've got to say that probably my earliest exposure to Godzilla was, and this is slightly shameful, but when you consider kind of the time of my childhood, it kind of fits in.
Hey, shame is always a winner. Talk about the passion, believe me.
I'm sure there's plenty of that to come, so we won't be leaving anyone disappointed.
From the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky. Godzilla, and Godzilla.
But yeah, Godzilla, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I think it was Hanna-Barbera. I'm pretty sure it was Hanna-Barbera.
It's about 78, isn't it? So yeah,
probably. And kind of translated over here in the kind of, well, not translated literally, but came over here in the early 80s. And I remember even as a child of 4 or 5. Thinking it was all great until Godzuki turned up. The theme song's going along brilliantly and, crashing and smashing and so on and so forth. And then, yes, comical winged dragon. The Scrappy-Doo of Godzilla, which, as we may touch on later, was actually unnecessary as he already had his own Scrappy-Doo. So,
it's interesting that you've actually sort of touched upon the two main points that people who aren't into Godzilla necessarily will know, which is obviously the awful film remake in the 90s, the cartoon, and obviously the third one is Man in a Rubber Suit. So,
yes.
As a child, did that sort of thing appeal to you more because it was so Man in a Rubber Suit-esque? or was it just the spectacle of it?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I do think you're a lot more able to suspend disbelief, obviously, when younger. And I think it's the memories of... I wouldn't say I saw that many when I was younger, but I do remember seeing some. And the memory of that is kind of what spurred me on to rediscover it. There were a lot of things I found that kind of I liked up until a certain age, and then, for want of a better explanation, Nirvana came along, and I forgot about everything. For about 3-4 years, kind of, I didn't touch any computer games, didn't watch any Godzilla, and various things that just kind of went away at that time of music, and suddenly crept back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
I think it was when I went to Reading Festival. Everyone was talking about in the queue for the Reading Festival. Did you see Destroy All Monsters last night? And I taped the film just on its name, not knowing what it was. So heavens above was I surprised to find it was a Godzilla film.
From the laboratories and arsenals of all civilized nations, the most powerful, the newest, the most devastating of weapons blast into action in their effort to destroy all monsters.
See, you say it's quite interesting, Destroy All Monsters, obviously, because most people would associate them with Godzilla versus Thing, Godzilla versus another man in a rubber suit, that sort of pattern.
That's the thing. Well, that is what basically all of the films are, except for the first one. The very first Godzilla film, or Gojira as it was in Japan, is surprisingly, for a film that does blatantly feature a man in a rubber suit destroying Tokyo, it's a very kind of sober and measured affair, and kind of some very good acting performances. Because it is basically a muse on the atomic bombing that ended the war in several ways. But then, from the next one, it's just he fights other monsters.
I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, it's quite terrifying when you think how close to Hiroshima. I mean, when is the first Godzilla film?
Well, it was made in 1954. I'm imagining it's set. I think it is set in the same period.
So 9 years have passed.
Yeah, not long at all. I think it was the first time such subjects were actually tackled in film. And obviously, as you can imagine, it's got to be something that was affecting the Japanese psyche at the time. The plotline in a nutshell is that whereas in later films they would say that Godzilla was a dinosaur that was mutated by the atomic bomb, in this he's a force of nature that's awakened by the atomic bomb. So anyway, he wakes up, this legendary creature, and comes and smashes Tokyo to pieces.
Excellent. And
they have the chance to... I'm trying not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it and wants to see it. And the last third of the film, much as it all features monster rampages, also features the kind of agonizing choice that the scientists have to make about whether or not to, A, kill the only example of a Godzilla in the world, for all they know, and B, whether if they use this technology, it could get into other people's hands and be used against other humans.
So the
whole thing is
yeah.
And then you look at the campy kind of early 70s one, and you think, how do we get here?
I would consider myself sort of the archetypal geek. Godzilla for me, not interested, just never entered that sort of space for me.
I think another of the problems with it in this country, particularly, less so in America, but it's pretty hard to actually get the DVDs. I may be astoundingly wrong about this, but as far as I know, the only ones that have actually been officially released in the European DVD region, is it Region 2?
We are Region 2.
I'm not very good at this, is the original one, and the 1998 American one.
So they're very much running the gamut there.
Exactly. So I'm trying to track them down. I've got a big, very nice actually box set of the American ones, and that's great because there's like 7 films, and you get the Japanese dub and the American dub
right.
in each of those, which is a very nice package. And you get to see the some of the kind of repackagings that they did when it crossed to America, like Godzilla vs. Mothra. Mothra is probably a monster that people who have just dipped their toes into Godzilla water might actually have heard of. It's like
the giant butterfly thing. Yeah.
Yes. The other, somehow, that's the other iconic Toho monster. So Godzilla and Mothra face off, but it comes to America, and they've retitled it Godzilla vs. The Thing. And if you look at the old kind of drive-in posters for it, it shows Godzilla standing next to a question mark with a load of tentacles behind it. So
isn't that the possible Big Mama's house too, as well? I'm sure there's some correlation for that.
But yeah, and so I thought, well, I've got to watch this, really. And like, there's these bits where they're pointing to a gigantic moth and going, "Look, it's the Thing," and then pointing at these two caterpillars and going, "Look, Mothra."
Awesome.
So yeah, but a lot of the American dubs. I mean, the American dub of the original Godzilla is absolutely terrible. It's and I say that with some affection, because what they've done is they've dropped Raymond Burr into it. He of Ironside fame.
Parachuted in.
Yeah, basically they've just kind of filmed extra scenes, which are mainly of him stood next to a translator going, "What was that? What did he say?" And my particular favourite, my Japanese is a little rusty.
Godzilla, king of the monsters, alive, surging up from the depths of the sea on a tidal wave of terror to wreak vengeance on mankind.
Godzilla, king of the monsters, it's alive!
A gigantic beast,
Stalking the earth, crushing all before it.
in a cyclonic cavalcade of electrifying horror.
Raging through the streets on a rampage of total destruction. You may wish to deny it, but your eyes tell you it's true.
A tale to stun the mind.
See Godzilla, king of the monsters.
And so basically, couldn't they just have dubbed it?
I love the idea of a giant Raymond Burr as well, the size of Godzilla, poking his head in and going, of course, this would have been Perry Mason era, not Ironside as yet.
Yes.
So the idea that all of a sudden America's top legal counsel turns up in the middle of Tokyo looking at a giant lizard. So you've mentioned obviously having the DVDs there. How much Godzilla merch, if we can use a technical term, how much Godzilla merch do you own, would you say?
Really not that much, and that is just a question of availability as well. I think the best one I've got is I've got a plush Godzilla, and I mean, I know they make kind of plush versions of most things, but I was still a bit confused to see a plush Godzilla, I must say.
Is that not just a dinosaur?
Well, there's kind of subtle differences. I mean, you know, your standard dinosaur is usually green. Godzilla is generally presented as a grey colour.
Really?
At least in the early films.
Any time I've seen Godzilla, it's green, dark greenish.
Yeah, I think that this is the trouble. It's a bit like Incredible Hulk, where he was demonstrably grey for a while, but people remember the green one more because it was in the later stuff.
Leave him alone, he was in a war. He can't help it.
But yeah, so once again, yeah, it's a disappointing collection from Talking Point. I've got like a couple of 90s Godzillas and Mechagodzillas, a couple of wind-ups from around that period as well, which all came with their own little to-scale army men and tanks, which I thought was quite a nice touch.
Yeah. So you're saying, come on, the Japanese peoples, bring out more of your DVDs. How much actually is there unreleased?
Unreleased in Britain, like I say, everything but 2, so you're looking at a very meaty part of 30 movies there.
And how many of those 30 movies are shit?
Right, well, I mean, I'll be refreshingly frank about this. I touched upon Scrappy Doo earlier, and certainly Son of Godzilla may be for aficionados only.
The mightiest monster the world has ever known. The mightiest egg the world has ever known. Introducing the son of Godzilla. The fantastic red water, one of the many weird natural phenomena on mysterious Sorgel Island. A great scientific experiment begins.
Try another frequency. What is it? It seems as though something's jamming the wavelengths.
Son of Godzilla, a rollicking monster spectacular.
Is that the series Nadir?
It isn't. No, it got worse from there. It got
worse
briefly
than
better.
Son of Godzilla. Oh my!
It did briefly get better. They went from Son of Godzilla, if I remember rightly. They went from that to Destroy All Monsters. But the ones after, there was Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, which was made by
already a winner.
the original producer was sidelined, and this whole new production team came in and did it in like a psychedelic style with an environmental message and kind of a psychedelic animation and a kind of a hippie song, I think is the best way to put it. I'm trying to work out whether it's like the Japanese equivalent of Donovan singing it.
That would be awesome.
The original producer came back after illness and saw the film and told the director, "You have killed Godzilla, and you'll never work for Toho again."
Now Toho presumably is the studio that made all these.
Toho Studios. From the Smog Monster one, you get Godzilla's Revenge, which is actually all about a latchkey kid living in Tokyo, learning to stand up to his bullies, which features a few. Basically, when he dreams he's the friend of Minilla, who is the aforementioned son of Godzilla. And they conduct conversations in the Dreamland in Monster Island in English. And the whole thing is, in some ways, it's even more psychedelic than Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. But yeah, so
terrific.
There is that one, and the two after that, Godzilla vs. Gigan and Godzilla vs. Megalon, are just bad because they've got no budget. They reuse kind of stock footage. The new monsters are poorly conceived, and I don't know, they're just poor in general.
And would you say that's mainly where people get their sort of impression now of Godzilla as being exactly that, cheap sets and obviously people in rubber suits smooshing cardboard houses?
Yes. I mean, I do fear that's definitely the case. I think it's Godzilla vs. Megalon, which is basically agreed to be the series Nadir, is also the most viewed one in America, I think, or the second most viewed one in America. So it got picked up by a lot of cable channels due to its kind of cheapness to get hold of.
KGW and TV49. Thank you for celebrating a very big day in history with us. Yes, for 30 years, Godzilla has been knocking them dead. Well, so to speak. So we're sending a big happy birthday out to Godzilla, wherever he or it may be. From KPDX TV 49 and 62 KGW.
They had a fantastic poster campaign, which featured Godzilla and Megalon, each standing on one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center.
Oh, that's always a winner.
And that apparently pulled the crowds in. And immediately after that, they perked up with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla, which I think were the 20th anniversary kind of celebration films. And to the point where they literally have quite obviously gone, sod this. Terror of Mechagodzilla, for instance, is the only Godzilla film that has naked boobs in. So
always win.
They went completely the other way. What I like about Terror of Mechagodzilla actually is, if not my favourite, then one of my favourite movies in the whole canon, is that it stands up as a great B movie. Even if you ignore Godzilla being in it, the iconic monster being in it, if it was just any other three monsters and the same storyline and the same kind of gore and guns and aliens and so on and so forth, then it would still be a cracking B movie. So
wicked. And I'm assuming the mecha part means there is a giant robot Godzilla as well.
Yes, there is, which is all kinds of awesome, as you can imagine.
It sounds wicked, genuinely. So obviously, we sort of mentioned that there are a number of less than perfect Godzilla films. So,
Yes.
Has that ever sort of transposed itself to you being sort of teased a bit for being a Godzilla fan? Or has it always sort of had a bit of a sheen of cool?
I would say it's had a sheen of cool, yeah. The thing with the Godzilla films is there's a whole different kind of classification. It's more of a Japanese thing to do, if you see what I mean. And kind of, it's alongside. I know this is a kind of geekery in itself, but it kind of goes more hand in hand with anime and manga and obscure Japanese bands, obscure Japanese computer games, and things like that.
Yeah.
Kind of more in the profile of a Japanophile than a straight up kind of film or comic nerd or something like that. And because of that, I think because it is slightly amputated from that sphere of things, shall we say, that it kind of comes away reasonably scot-free. Yeah. And there's also the fact that not many people know much about Godzilla except for, like you say, the guy in the rubber suit. So I just generally tend to get patted on the head and left in the corner if that one ever comes out. It's not the most kind of dangerous of my geek devices.
So, but if you had to be entrusted with the capability of making people interested, what would you recommend to me and the people listening on how to get into Godzilla 101?
Right, well, I mean, I know I have said that it's not really indicative of the way the series went, but I think your starting point is the first Godzilla film.
謙虚しろ。しかし先生、だからといってあの凶暴な怪物をあのままほっとくわけにはいきません。君までがゴジラを抹殺しようというのか。6ヶ月の不幸が生んだ世紀の巨人ゴジラ。映画技術の粋を集め、大東宝が全能力を上げた空前のスペクタクルゴジラ。本年最大の話題作ゴジラ。
But it's just, I don't know, it will make you care a bit more about the whole mythology of the character, which I think is a good place to start most of the time. Although I would say, yes, get the Japanese dub, which is known as Gojira. Don't get Godzilla King of the Monsters, because otherwise you'll just be looking at Raymond Burr going, "What?" for the next 2 hours or so, which is not fantastic.
How did he get his wheelchair up that hill? Oh, sorry. So it's not that era.
Destroy All Monsters, we mentioned a couple of times. I'd recommend that one as being the high point of the more campy 70s ones with the major monster-on-monster battles. Basically, if you watch that one, you can miss out most of the others. Unless, I mean, there is Godzilla vs. King Kong, of course.
Really?
Well, what basically happened there was Toho borrowed the rights to the character for a bit, and then Toho went on to do a series of King Kong in Japan. But obviously they did it with their suitmation, guy in a rubber suit technology, rather than the stop motion.
Is that a technical term?
It is, yeah. I think it is the technical term. If it's not a technical term, then it's a term in fan circles, definitely. So yeah, if you want to see Godzilla fight King Kong, then Godzilla vs. King Kong. But I wouldn't say it's one of the better ones.
It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah. I'd also recommend from the because Godzilla went on hiatus after the aforementioned Terror of Mechagodzilla for about, I think it was about 10 years. 9-10 years, something like that, and they came back with a reboot, sort of, where they said, right, now we're saying...
He wasn't wearing a baseball cap, was it?
No.
Holding a skateboard and going, Godzilla dude!
Well, this was the best thing about it, was it kind of reintroduced the original unstoppable force of nature Godzilla again, after all the campy stuff, and just went, right, okay, the first Godzilla film happened, you just dreamt all the rest of them, and now let's pick it up from there.
It's a way to do it.
So they did one serious film, and then they went, well, that went well, and then they did a second one after that, Godzilla vs. Biollante.
From Destiny's Child?
Yes, that's the one. And then after that, they just, nobody went to see that one, even though it was a fantastic monster design. So then they panicked and went, let's bring back all the old monsters. So they did Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah again, Godzilla vs. Mothra again, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla again, and any of those three are quite frankly fantastic, because they're Godzilla films with reasonably good characterization, reasonably good acting, and reasonably up-to-date special effects that don't lose any of the charm of the original. So I think they're on something ridiculous like a 15-year hiatus until the until I think the 65th anniversary or so. They've chosen a reasonably arbitrary anniversary on which they might think about doing another Godzilla film. But the worrying rumour that's reached me recently is that there are some American studios interested in getting hold of the rights again. Not Columbia TriStar, who ruined it in the first place, but just some other ones. And I worry that the American version of Godzilla is never going to live up to the Japanese one. I think it's too Japanese a creation to be handled by other countries.
He is back, and he's more magnificent, more glamorous, more devastating than ever. Prepare yourself. The greatest star of all has returned. Godzilla, 1985.
Brought to you by Dr. Pepper, the soft drink that's out of the ordinary, like you.
Right, well, that's almost all we have time for. But before we go, I just want you to cast your mind back to that living room when you were a child watching the Godzilla cartoon on presumably BBC One. Or
I think it was one, yeah, because they had Spider-Man and his amazing friends as well. So,
which was awesome.
Yes.
Oh, let's invent an Iceman fire thing. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, we'll invent another one. That's fine. Yeah, who's she? I don't know. Put her in. It's fine. Which is the exact mentality of that cartoon. So, you're a child again. You're watching BBC One, probably tucking into a jam butty or something, waiting for Godzilla. What would you go back and tell your young self about Godzilla fandom? Don't.
It's no. I think I don't think there's anything wrong with Godzilla fandom whatsoever. It will at times make people look up to you. It will at times make people look down on you. It will make people regard you as extremely strange at times, but what obsession can we not say that about, I guess?
Well, admirable words, sir. Admirable words.
And also, don't worry about not liking baked beans, because as soon as you're a student, your taste for them will just fall right in.
Gareth, it's been a pleasure.
Yep, for me as well.
Well, we have got a very special treat this series. We're getting everyone to do the credits for the series themselves in a unique style. Unfortunately, the only person who records, writes, produces, or does anything on this show, other than the guest, is me. So for this one, I'd like you to do the credits for Talk About the Passion in a very poorly translated and slightly racist screaming Tokyo denizen as Godzilla is crashing around them. And I'll provide some background music for you. So when you're ready, go. Godzilla. Come on. Yeah, Godzilla is coming all over you. Come on, credits. Godzilla.
I would love to do the credits if I wasn't paralysed with laughter upon my sofa.
Godzilla's coming for you, and you, and you, and you.
Godzilla will fix it.
I'd watch it.